Hi, I'm Anna O'Brien, a licensed professional counselor and your host of this new podcast series, Art of the Referral. I'm so excited to bring this podcast to life. It's a passion area of mine. I've worked in a variety of settings, including the acute inpatient care facility for the first 6 years of my life as a therapist. And I've worked in group practices, I've started my own, and I currently run a private practice community that hosts over 50 therapists in the Philadelphia region. One thing that I've noticed is consistent throughout is the lack of collaboration. And I'll talk a little bit about what I think is happening with this and why it's such an issue, because ultimately we know that collaboration is a cornerstone of excellent patient care and mental health. However, we're just not doing that great of a job of it as a field. And when I know that we're dealing with one of the most compassionate groups of human beings on the earth, which is mental health care providers, if we're having this big of a problem with it, it really shows me that there's a complex problem, right? It's not easy to solve, but it's important to solve because good connection processes and finding people the right kind of care and feeling like as a provider, someone's got your back if you run into an area in treatment that you need support around. All those things are so important. And everyone suffers when we don't deal with it. We notice that providers burn out. We notice that people drop out of treatment. Sometimes they get a bad taste in their mouth about what treatment is like if they can't find someone to connect with, or if they are constantly running through providers because they aren't connected to the right type of provider with the right kind of training. So it's kind of been my professional mission to look at this and address it in a really creative way. I've taken on to this idea of starting some conversations with people because that's really where it begins, right? It begins in us having open and frank dialogue and understanding what is going on out there and admitting the things that we don't know that we don't even know. So often we kind of feel like we have to be everything for everyone as a provider. You know, you go to graduate school and you're given classes on everything. No one really talks about specializing. And even if you don't specialize, that's okay. But it is important to know when something might be outside of your scope so that when you get that phone call, you know where to send that person and you help them avoid kind of a rabbit hole of dead end referrals. Or maybe you're seeing a patient and you've, working on a certain issue with them and then something else pops out. Or maybe you are working with someone and everything is going well and you understand the issue that they came in to work on, but then something else pops up and maybe this is outside of your scope. What do? You don't want that person to feel abandoned. You don't want to just transfer them out, but you also don't want to grit your teeth and just try to figure it out yourself, because there are gold standards of treatment in different areas, right? And if we don't admit what we don't know, then we can't support the client in getting there. I've noticed that providers at different levels of care are so disconnected. And as I was mentioning about the problem being complex, one of the things that we really need to address is the fact that we are expected to do so much. So the window for networking and collaboration is very small, and it's often unpaid. So what do, right? We can't keep asking more and more and more of therapists if we don't have systems in place that make it easier for them. So my professional mission on the other side of things is to deliver those tools through things like Consult List and My Practice Video. But here, it's really just to begin dialogue and help people start to learn a little bit more. So I'm hoping maybe that on your way to work or on the train, you might pop on this podcast and learn a little bit. And I really hope it normalizes to you that it's okay not to know and it's okay to ask for help. Everyone's going to benefit from it, including you. So whether you are a social worker at a hospital setting, a school counselor, maybe you work in a primary care setting, or maybe you're a therapist out there in the field, this is for you. This is to arm you and guide you with some knowledge so that you can show up for people and be there in ways in which you're able to be there. And when you're not, you have some ideas of how you might be able to support them. and asking for that help. Oftentimes, it's really, really difficult for people to ask for help. They're at their most vulnerable. And we experience this too when we don't know, how to solve or help a person through an issue, right? If it's outside of our scope of training, we experience that same feeling. And that feeling of shame can keep us kind of quiet, and it can keep us from reaching out. But we know, just like we say to our clients, that it's important. It's important to be vulnerable. It's important to ask for help, and great things can come from it. So I'm here to help lead the way in that conversation. We will be having experts on in different specialty care. So if you have a client who came in for help with anxiety, and a few months in, you start to recognize that there might be signs of disordered eating or an eating disorder, what do you do if you're not trained in that? We'll be talking about that with eating disorder experts. We'll be learning about how ADHD can show up and how you can support someone in finding resources to address that. This doesn't always mean transferring someone out completely. It may be adding in an additional tool. There are so many amazing programs and complementary therapies that can support your client and also help them realize there's lots of people out there ready to help. It's a wonderful lesson to send. They're not alone in the world, and there are people there, and their issues are not unusual. In fact, there are entire specialties that focus around those issues because so many people have them. I'm excited for this journey with you. The first few episodes, we're really going to start with a foundation around referrals. We're going to look at the ethics and legalities surrounding referrals. We really want to make sure that we know why we're referring out or why we're seeking a different type of care, how to go about that in a really ethical way. And we're also going to look at countertransference, because so much of the time, some of our own junk can get in the way of excellent patient care. Sometimes our own feelings of inadequacy can impact how we show up for a client. Sometimes a client's issue may remind us of a painful part of our past, and we may find ourselves unconsciously bracing against it or avoiding it. It's all important to look at this stuff and really be open with each other. And it's important to me that I create a space where it feels safe to share that. So I'm excited to get started with you, and I really hope that you enjoy this. Please send questions, subscribe. And if you have any ideas of areas where it's really important we start to talk about a specialty care or an issue surrounding referrals, let me know. I am excited about where this is going to go. I'm really not aiming at perfection here, because that is really the arch nemesis of dialogue and vulnerability. So you will hear me say, you will hear me make bad jokes. This is a place to be human, and I hope that you feel comfortable here as much as I do. Have a wonderful day, and please tune in. We look forward to getting to know each other better. Take care.